How did you realize you were dating a dumb butt? Viewers Edition.
Story 1. I thought about dating this girl from college for a while. She was always hanging out with us, and we had plenty of common interests. She said no. I just took it in stride. We stayed friends and still are friends, but God, how lucky I am to dodge that bullet. 3 stories. 1, she claims she used to run all the time, that she had a fast mile time and running helps her deal with stress. I said that we should run sometime together. We go out to the football field for a quick mile. What follows was the saddest attempt at a light jog I'd ever seen. Firstly, she doesn't make it an eighth of the track before she needs to stop, claiming she's about to faint. She has the most geriatric running form I'd ever seen, crunching her stomach and chest downward and inward as she goes. She squeezes her butt cheeks and tucks her tailbone in and makes it look like she just crapped her pants. Her feet swing wider than they're supposed to swing forward. She runs with one hand on her shoulder. I asked her why she runs that way, and she just casually said, "It's how you're supposed to run." I try to correct her, and she actually starts to do better, but then she tells me she's about to faint. Turns out she was about to faint because, get this, she didn't think that she was supposed to breathe hard while running. If you're wondering, no, she doesn't have any kind of condition. She's just an idiot. The second required a bit of context. When playing the guitar, there's a thing you can do where you press down on a string and run your finger across it. I think it's called legato. Anyway, we both play casually. I'm trying to teach her how to play Jack Johnson's Upside Down. In this song, legato is a key part. It is literally as simple as running your finger across a line if you can press hard enough. However, she seems to think the only way to do it is to lift your finger from the string and press it on each fret individually. This is as wrong as being told to walk left and then proceeding to walk right. I literally explained it to her for upwards of 20 minutes using terminology a 4-year-old could understand, demonstrating it literally right before her eyes, having her specific name, the differences between the actions that she's doing and the action that I'm doing, and confirming with her which is the correct one. Nothing. She doesn't understand why it doesn't work and why she can't play the song. Lastly, the concept of a Mary Sue is all that completely lost on her. We both like to write. She would occasionally share her stories with me, claim they were 100% original, and that she knows this one is going to be the next Harry Potter or something. She's currently writing a story about a detective that gets involved in court activity. Hilarious part is not only is she a Mary Sue, but it's basically the exact same plot of Choo Choo Charles. And when I bring this up, her only defense is back and forth between, but the plot is different because the main character is a woman, and mine is grounded in realism because the cults don't actually have any magic because magic doesn't exist. So many things about what she was saying just annoyed me. Nice girl, but a total idiot. I'm going to say that these 3 examples don't tell me that she is a total idiot. It tells me that she has areas that she's, maybe not as skilled in. But I've also always, there are many types of intelligence. Different people are smart about different things. For instance, I could point out a whole bunch of grammar errors that you made, because I'm kind of good at that, because I went to school for it and everything. And granted, you're writing fast. That is not an accurate judgment of how smart you are as a person. Much like I don't think these instances are necessarily a total indicator of how smart she is. So, but they do make for some amusing stories, so glad you shared. Story 2. I was thinking about dating a girl, let's call her Ashley, and before I asked Ashley out, I was getting to know her. Ashley was homeschooled, and I was curious about it. I asked her if she had studied geometry yet. She said, "Oh yeah, I love maps." I laughed because I thought she was kidding, and she just gave me this confused look. I later found out that Ashley's dad was under investigation for once selling fake cancer meds and was making $10,000 a month consulting for his pharmaceutical company that he sold to another company that was aware that the meds were bogus. He got a nominal fine and 200 hours of community service. What a bunch of BS. Anyway, I guess her parents had more on their mind than school at the time and just let their kids study whatever they wanted. Also, as an aside, my now wife told me a story about how Ashley's sister, let's call her Elise, had gotten angry at my wife's sister once and had crushed a Christmas ornament into my wife's sister's head. This just gets weirder. I'd briefly dated Elise and totally believed my wife because Elise had anger management issues. Oh, and her dad did too. yelled at a kid that played with his slate chess set, and quite literally gently placed a piece on the board when it just broke in half. You could have super glued it back together and you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. Anyway, that guy was crazy. He ran a private church with all the money he was making and taught all of his followers that people are inherently evil and that he could absolve them of their sins if they gave him his money. Just an all-around winner, that guy. I mean, I don't actually have anything bad to say about Ashley. She, misunderstood, she mixed up geometry and geography. The story is much more about apparently her very awful parents and some crap her sister did or something. But, I don't know. Ashley seems fine. She seems fine for for the family she had to deal with.
Story 3. My late wife worked with a 19-year-old woman who asked, "What happens to the sun at night?" Quick as a flash, an older, snarky colleague said they put it in a box until morning. The 19-year-old totally accepted this. Story 4. She was a friend of a woman I was dating, but she was all kinds of special. I was in the army at the time, and we were having a Waffle House feast. I mentioned that I expected to get transferred soon and had put West Germany at the top of my preference sheet. This girl immediately breaks out in tears and cries that I can't go to Germany, the Nazis will kill me. A few questions later, we realized she thought World War II was still going on. This was in 1986. Story 5. I wasn't dating him, thankfully, but one time I casually mentioned the 7 continents. My dad interrupted me to correct me that there were, in fact, 8 of them. So, confused and hoping he was drunk, I said, "No, there's only 7, and he dramatically asks me to name them. Now, there are so many things wrong here, but the main one is that he's the one with an extra, so by all rights, the burden of proof is on him. Also, this was before I had ever heard about Lemuria or splitting Oceania into Australia and Zealandia or anything like that. But that wasn't what he was talking about anyhow. So I start listing them off. North and South America, Africa, Antarctica, Australia, Asia, Europe, and he stops me, looking smug like a cat who just ate a canary. He asks, "Why are Europe and Asia separate continents?" And honestly, I don't know. I've often asked that question myself, and I've never gotten a good answer. You'd think if anything, it'd be India. That's the one that's on a different tectonic plate, but I digress. So that's where the conversation ended. He had talked me down to 6 continents, I guess, and he was treating that like a victory, even though it was the exact opposite of the position he held. I really, really hope he was drunk.
This one hurts my head so much. God dang it. I know folks where they get into an argument with you and it doesn't even become about proving themselves right. Just so long as they think they've proven you wrong, then they win. I don't know. And also, Asia and Europe are different because that's where the line in the map is. I don't know why either.
Story 6. Some of these just happen to be that instance where you've gone your whole life without encountering that little fact you have a misunderstanding over. Like, my family and I were visiting a museum and they had beautiful tapestries depicting unicorns. In the corner of the room, they had a narwhal tusk to sort of take the place of the unicorn horn. When my aunt saw it, she got confused. She thought that narwhals, like unicorns, were a myth. I had to explain through my laughter that narwhals are indeed real, and they are sometimes called the unicorns of the sea. Story 7. A lot of people have weird blind spots in their knowledge. It can happen to anyone. The ideal response when these situations come up is to politely correct the person and encourage them to learn more. If you laugh at them, you're training them to avoid saying anything around you. In which case, their blind spots will never be revealed and you'll never have a chance to correct them. Or worse, you'll make them get defensive about their intelligence, making them more likely to lash out at you if you try to correct them.
Story 7 gets it. This commenter knows what's up. People have blind spots in their knowledge. I have blind spots. Do you have any idea how long I was using the word disconcerting instead of disconcerting? Because they sound similar enough, but eventually a friend heard me is just like, "Do you mean disconcerting?" And I was like, What? Everyone's got blind spots. It's fine. My problem comes when there are the people who are wrong, but become kind of belligerent or snobby about it. Like you try and like nicely correct them and they're like, I'm correct. And then you're like, all right, well now I'm going to tell people about this because you're being kind of a brat. But yeah, for the most part, everybody's got some area where they're, an idiot. I sure do.
Story 8. Not a date, but my sister. We were hanging out when I saw a dead pigeon on the side of the road, and I said, "Look, a dead pigeon," to which she replied, looking toward the sky, "Where? Where?" I do feel sorry for her boyfriend, though. Story 9. Maybe it was when she insisted we sit in the car in front of a destination we were already late for to listen to a particular song so she could explain how it fit into the already repeatedly proven false urban myth. Maybe it was the time she congratulated our waiter at an Outback Steakhouse for having Subaru name a car after their restaurant. Maybe it was when she lectured our waitress at an expensive restaurant for several minutes on how the chef was supposed to cook her meal. Maybe it was, well, never mind. Story 10. I dated a girl in college that told me I could get electrocuted by talking on a cordless phone during a lightning storm. She also asked her black dorm mate if black people smoked. Please note, she was in an honors program and was considered an elite student. Story 11. I married, then divorced him. He went on to rant about the U.S. catering to folks who speak Spanish because the security truck at Walmart said Securitas, so obviously it meant security in Spanish. I speak Spanish and had translated for a customer and a clerk at a gas station 15 minutes prior. He didn't even attempt to ask, and when I pointed out the word for security in Spanish as seguridad, he looked me in the eyes and asked me how I would know, as if I hadn't spoken Spanish in front of him 15 minutes ago.
How? Why would he question your knowledge of Spanish if he knows that you've spoken Spanish and he doesn't? Like, I feel like, how? Why, people? Don't do that.
Story 12. My boyfriend woke me up last night at 2 a.m. to tell me he realized "nt" isn't actually short for not. He thought putting N''T after stuff to negate was just a meme. I used to be a linguistics student, and he gets so upset when I laugh, but damn, it's hard. Story 13. I'm not dating anyone, but me and my friend decided to troll my mate by saying men have periods. He believed this as we took him to many other dudes who were in on the joke, and they all said, "Yeah, guys have periods." Then the guy we were trolling had a nervous look on his face, and he then said, "I think I had one." Everyone burst into laughter. It was a year ago, and I still bring it up today. Story 14. Not someone I dated, but a coworker. Not only didn't know what an orca was, but thought everyone who was telling her the same thing I was, that it was a killer whale, was only telling her this to mess with her. Then when I told her the reason orcas are commonly known as killer whales, she doubled down that I was messing with her. She was 16, and I never felt as worried for her generation as I did that day.
I mean, she was 16 and didn't know that killer whales are also called orcas. I don't feel like that's necessarily a reason to feel as worried for her generation as you did that day. I feel like if someone's not all that interested in the ocean, that's a pretty reasonable gap in knowledge to have, especially at 16. And, it's like she would have probably heard of killer whales a ton, but had never heard them called orcas. So it'd be like, I know killer whales. I've heard about killer whales plenty. I would know this, right? No, not necessarily. So, I don't know. This barely registers as like a 1 or 2 as a, how didn't she know that, to me.
Story 15. Not me, but my dad. He decided to date a woman who was 10 plus years younger than him and thought that the stuff she didn't know was because she's still a young adult. Well, he was wrong. She wasn't able to answer questions that I even knew as a middle schooler, and when they got married, they got a child. I don't blame her for not knowing what to do with your first child, but my dad kept explaining stuff to her, and she would think it's not the right way to do it. One time, she didn't even admit that she was in the wrong. She was watching a soccer game and basically screamed through the entire house. My little brother, who wasn't even one at the time, woke up and was crying because of this, and she was the one who was angry. Not to mention, but they got divorced soon after, and on top of that, my dad got full custody of my little bro. Story 16. I had an ex that kept using decency when she meant audacity. She also handed out her account information to a scammer who called her and offered her a $5,000 loan, no questions asked. Story 17. Dude, my ex, who was in medical school, literally got extremely peeved with me because I said I hadn't eaten something that I had eaten the same day, claiming there was no possible way this could happen, even after I explained that different people have faster and slower metabolisms. What a piece of work. Story 18. I was with my ex for 7 years, so I could tell endless stories like this, but the best one is when we first started dating in high school. She had her period and told me that it must almost be over because she couldn't see any pieces of the egg in it anymore. I, a 17-year-old boy, had to explain to my 16-year-old girlfriend that human eggs aren't visible, and what she's likely seeing is her uterine lining and coagulated blood. She thought it was like a chicken egg or something. Story 19. This reminds me so much of my ex-girlfriend. She didn't understand where meat comes from. I literally had to explain that you have to slaughter an animal to harvest it and that it's usually muscle from said animal. She was disgusted by this fact, but never wanted vegetarian or vegan. Story 20. A girl I'd been dating for a short time said she had someone do a card reading or whatever it's called to see if our relationship was good or bad. Had no idea before that she was into the woo-woo magic/witchcraft stuff. I tried to understand why she believed stuff like that, so I asked her if the cards were ever wrong. She said, "Oh yeah, all the time." So this chick pays for someone to basically flip a coin for her that has a good chance of being wrong. We didn't last long after that. I knew she wasn't wife material, but she wasn't even girlfriend material after that.
I mean, I absolutely do not believe in that stuff either. And I wouldn't necessarily, I don't like to poke fun at people who have those beliefs and everything. But at the same time, I understand that that's kind of that's right along the side of like a belief system. And that can be kind of difficult in a relationship. Like, you don't necessarily want to enter into a relationship with someone who has such wildly different beliefs than you, because I was in a relationship like this once where the person had beliefs in ghosts and sage cleaning a room and stuff like that. That's fine that that's their belief, but I don't want my partner knowing that I think what they're doing is silly. It's fine for them to have that, but yeah, I don't know. This is too long of a comment already, but I get why you wouldn't want to be with someone who believes something that you just don't in such a core way, I guess. I don't know. I say I don't know at the end of these a lot. And I guess it's because I don't know.
Story 21. Not someone I'm dating, but a girl I know was running out of gas far away from a gas station. Her solution? Empty all the plastic water bottles from her trunk into the gas tank. In her defense, the needle did go up. Story 22. Here's one from myself. When I was in primary school, UK, about 10 to 11 years old, year 6, one of my classmates called someone a arist as an insult during some roasting session. Primary school insults are the weirdest, but sometimes the best. Somehow that was the first time I ever heard that word being used, and I found it absolutely hilarious, so I thought it was just a genuine insult. Fast forward a year, and I've started secondary school. In one of my English classes, we were analyzing old newspapers in groups. One of the girls in my group pointed out some awful news she found in the paper that someone had been AR'd. And at that exact moment, I thought it was a good idea to let out a chuckle because I still thought it was just a funny insult. Understandably, she and the rest of my group then looked at me in shock and disgust while I looked back in confusion. She then said something along the lines of, "How are you laughing at that?" I just apologized and lied that I was laughing at something else to save the embarrassment. Luckily, they didn't judge me too harshly after that. From then on, I never mentioned or reacted to words I don't know the meaning of without doing research.
Oh, absolutely. I think I myself, and I've known other people where when you're learning about like new words and people are like throwing around like stuff as like jokes, like in that age range from like 9 up through say like 14, you're learning so many new things, but you don't fully learn them and you start misusing stuff. This is just a super vague way of saying, yeah, sometimes you're misinformed, you do something like that. I don't think it's something to be embarrassed about at all. I think it's reasonable at that age that you didn't understand the word you were using had such a weighty meaning to it. And so even if they had been kind of, upset with you after that, I think they would have been able to understand, folks. Be able to sometimes just admit, you know what? I don't actually know what that means. Did I goof? Because sometimes you goof.
Story 23. First off, my girlfriend has mild brain damage resulting from her umbilical cord wrapping around her neck briefly before she was born. Her brother even warned me less than a week into our relationship that she's kind of trapped in the mentality of a 12-year-old. That said, for her birthday, our first year together, I got her a Build-A-Bear bunny. It was in a big cardboard box. I was too lazy to wrap the box, so I just draped my sweater over it. When she saw the box, she thought it was an actual live animal and freaked the F out. I had to spend a good 5 minutes physically wrestling her over the box to even get her to check it out. Once she saw what it was, she calmed down. Story 24. Not me, but a friend from college, which was from a long time ago. When he was in high school, he told me a story of how he dated one of his teachers. Morally questionable relationship aside, he was peeved at her that she failed one of his subjects, as if being her boy toy would suffice passing a subject. Needless to say, I was stunned when I heard his woes. I mean, really? How would you process it? The fact that she dated a teacher or he expected her to pass him. I'm like silent for a moment and just silently nodding to him, trying to say, I'm done. Story 25. Had to explain how a handicap sign worked. We were at a rest stop and I told him that he could wait in the car. Walked out to find him frantically searching for an exit door. When I asked why he didn't go out the door, he responded saying that all the doors were only for handicapped people. Yes, multiple people left through the same door. He told me they all had that face. No, we aren't dating anymore. Story 26. I knew long before this, but the most recent and my probable favorite example was when we were traveling down south with his parents. Long drive, we were all a little tired, so it's maybe understandable, but I still didn't let him live it down. All along the sides of the road were hand-painted signs saying, Orby needs a bypass. I made a comment to the effect of, they're really insistent about this bypass, huh? His response, who's Orby? Orby was the town we were driving through. His goofy butt thought a community had come together to get some guy heart surgery rather than wanting a slip road off the motorway. Story 27. My girlfriend seems to think that north is the direction in front of her too. What's crazy is she's really smart in a lot of ways and nearly has her master's degree. I tried to explain to her how cardinal directions actually work, and she just got annoyed and made me stop. I got a hearty laugh out of it though.
This is one that I've heard a few times and people have a hard time grasping it, and I don't know if it's just people aren't good with like spatial things or what exactly it is, but it makes perfect sense to me, but for some of these people, it's kind of a tricky thing for them to get a hold of. And yeah, I don't know how you approach explaining that either, but it would be hard not to have a little chuckle from it.
Story 28. We were playing Trivial Pursuit, and the question was, what are the 2 countries closest to Barcelona, besides Spain? We lived in Barcelona all our lives. He answered Portugal and Africa. Granted, the question might be tricky if you never paid attention to a map, which is already telling, and might forget about Andorra and say France and Italy or France and Monaco or something like that. But Africa? Man. Story 29. Brought my then-girlfriend to the zoo. We went to the giraffe enclosure, which was partially interactive. You could feed and pet them, and they would come right up to the side of the fence. I suggested going, and she asked, aren't they dangerous? I thought that was an odd question, so I asked her to elaborate. She dead-butt said, don't they eat meat? Giraffes. That was only the beginning of the dumb train. Story 30. In high school, I was on the phone with my girlfriend at the time. She was at a slumber party and all her friends were asleep. She had to use the restroom and couldn't get back out because the door was stuck. After about 45 minutes of trying, she started to panic. I asked her, "Babe, did you try to push the door?" This was followed by about 20 seconds of silence and an, "Oh." Story 31. My ex-girlfriend would crack me up with her silliness. She wasn't stupid, but could be quite the airhead sometimes. I still love her, and we are still talking. I adore her, but yeah, some of the stuff that comes out of her mouth makes me think of a belligerent, drunk, stoned guy. Don't even get me started on when she asked me to teach her how to cook. The poor girl was in tears by the end of it, frustrated she burnt the ground beef a little while browning it. It was adorable. Nothing like seeing a grown-butt woman start crying over something so silly. Story 32. One of my best friends had a girlfriend who was very book smart, but dumb as a post with anything relating to servicing. For example, we went on a hike when it was a little chilly. One person brought some hand warmers to share still in the package. This girl took and held on to them the entire hike. Once we got back to the parking lot, she handed back the hand warmers and told us these didn't work. They were still inside the plastic container. And that's not the worst part. As well, all are confused and inform her she needed to open them. She then says, "Oh, I think I've done this before," meaning this was her second time forgetting to open the package of hand warmers.
Hey, at least you can say, yeah, book smart, not great with certain other things. I am very smart about certain things. I was, a pretty advanced student with, science and English and stuff. Oh, awesome. Common sense and reading people sometimes. Oh no, I'm terrible. That's pretty funny though. I grew up with hand warmers, so to make that mistake twice, I'm sure that mistake now lives somewhere in the back of her mind, bugging her.
Story 33. Not a date, but my sister once confronted the entire family with a silly question. "What's the big bird's name from Sesame Street?" We all replied, "Big Bird." She said, "Yeah, but what's his name?" We repeated ourselves, "Big Bird." She said, "I know what he is, but what is his name?" My mother shouted loudly, "His name is Big Bird." The embarrassment that she felt in that moment was both hilarious and sad. I also had a friend who's a medical nurse called a psychopath a psychopath. I asked him to repeat himself and he said it again. He too was quite embarrassed when he realized that it's indeed pronounced psychopath. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.